So in this episode I'm going to be talking you guys through the Betloader. Quite a few of you will be familiar with it. There's a few new page likers obviously on the page. So welcome, you'll have seen what I'm about with the ones to watch, things like that, but there's lots of other content that I like to share with you guys. Anything that makes my life easier as far as I'm concerned could probably help you guys out. You've probably also seen the hacked up horse race in the write-up guides, the Road to Cheltenham notebooks they've got. Now they are fantastic if you like pen and paper. They've got some trends, some stats, key races in there. There is nothing out there on the market anywhere like it, let alone as good as it. So if you like your pen and paper, that's the way to do it. But me, I'm technical. I have a whole array of anti-post bets that go in there. And if I don't keep them organised and don't keep on top of them, then I can end up overstacking certain horses or underplaying certain markets. So the point of me putting this together is that it's a consolidation. So I might have 10 bets on a single horse in a particular market, but I might have backed it across 3 or 4 different bookmakers at different times, different odds, different stakes. So the Betloader just allows you to input all the bets you've struck for the anti-post festival. It filters them into race order. You can filter and you can do all different bits and pieces with it, but the main aim for me in there is it will consolidate to show me how much I've staked on a single selection and how much I'm going to win on a single selection. And then when it gets nearer to the festival, I will be looking not to lay out of horses. That's not what I'm about with this. I do just look at potentially moving my marks up. So say for example I've backed a horse, or I really fancy a horse for the Champion Hurdle. I've backed it, I feel like I'm in on it. When I actually look at the Betloader, I can see how much I've total staked across all markets, how much I stand to win off this particular horse. It gives me a bit of a feel to say, actually, hang on a minute, I do really fancy this, I need to boost it up a little bit. Or it also gives me the opportunity to look at it halfway through the season and say, right, hang on a minute, we need to steady up on that horse before we get in too deep. It's good for the multiples as well, because we'll load in certain horses in there and you can get an idea of how much weight of money we've been putting on certain horses. So it avoids overfilling a certain horse. There's obviously 28 races at the festival, half of those are handicaps or bumpers and mares races and novices and fox hunters and trash essentially for a long-term anti-post betting perspective. But the novice races, there's a good 10 races that we can get stuck into anti-post that really you're going to keep going around the same sort of horses, and we could easily get ourselves too deep into certain horses or certain races. And that just means that instead of spreading it across those 10 races, you'll never get an even split. You'll never be able to set yourself up to be in a really good position in absolutely every single race. But by knowing what you've already staked, by knowing who you need to fill up a little bit more on, who you might want to get some cover on, or who you can afford to get some cover on, really does help me as it goes through the season. So I'll talk through in here how the Betloader works, all the different features that are in there, and then I'll do something later on in the season. So when it gets to the new year is exactly when I'll start looking at it in depth. I'll be looking at how I can pad out some of the markets. So the big example I can give you now, the year Footpad won the Arkle, it was a 4-runner race in the end. I'd backed Petit Mouchoir anti-post for the Arkle at 20s. I'd backed Footpad anti-post for the Arkle at 33 to 1. St Calvados was the other one. I didn't back him. Someone did tell me about him at 40s and I just poo-pooed him as a handicapper. I could have gone for some cover on the day, but I didn't. And there was one other in there that I can't even remember the name of it. But there was 4 runners that were in the race essentially. One of them wasn't going to win anyway, but because I'd backed these horses so far out and I backed them at such big prices, I could have afforded to cover my stake by backing every runner in the race, and I would have been able to turn a profit. And that's not necessarily what I'm saying you have to do or what you should be doing, but if you get yourself in a position where you could say, look, I could stake £100 on the Arkle market, and my best case scenario is I could win £1,000, and my worst case scenario is I make 50 quid, then, I mean, you'd be a bit foolish not to do it. And because, like I say, there could be probably 10, a dozen races that you might want to get stuck into. If you could do that on every single market, you could almost be, what you do on the exchanges is called greening up. You could get yourself in a position where you could just make a profit, whatever the result is. And when we get to the festival, you get the Sky Bet free bets, Paddy Power will do, you get money back offers, all those sorts of things. They're the sort of races where if you're just betting for the festival and you've not got stuck into anything, you'll start piling on horses, you'll stick more and more bets on them. If you've been astute enough to back anti-post and you're in a good position, you can use those particular offers to sort of pave your way so that you've got some cover in some other horses, or potentially in some other races if you don't 100% know where the horses are going to run. So as I say, I'll go on to that in more detail in like a January video, probably around about that time. But for now, I'll just go through the basics of the Betloader. If you're interested in me sending you a copy, I used to get you guys to message the page, but it's much easier. I'll just give you the email address. It's info@chelt-mental.co.uk. Drop the email into there, and then as soon as I get it, I'll reply back to you. A couple of version things to do with it, which I'll put in the description or the comments within this. But yeah, I'm going to talk you through all of that. And then the next bit we're going to be banging on after that is the best way to be playing the anti-post markets, different types of bets, tactics, all those sort of things. So I'm going to be arming you up with as much ammunition as you could possibly have to be a better anti-post punter, essentially. I'm not telling you exactly how you should be doing it, I'm just telling you things that I've learned. I'll give you methods and ideas that you might not be aware of, or I might just sort of reconfirm things that you're doing. So on with the how-to. So welcome to this video talking you through the Cheltmental Betloader. Plenty of you will have seen it over the last couple of seasons. Last year had a bit of a facelift. I've tried to squeeze in a few improvements in there. I wanted to get a feed through to Odds Checker to work out the implied chance better and give you the opportunity to view prices as they changed, but you know, taking a little bit longer. If I'm going to put it in there for the mainstream, there'll be a few things I need to tweak on your Office applications as well, so for the short term that's just not going to be happening, but I'll show you some more videos as the year carries on, essentially, to show you things I'm working on and tools that might be of use to you guys. Got quite a few things that are to do with prices, markets opening, price changes, things like that. But for the Betloader itself, this is the standing and starting view for you. You can see there's a table in there with a list of selections where they're bet on what race is for with who. There's an array of icons, and then there's a quick stats table on the right hand side showing you how much you've staked, how much you could potentially win, and your payouts for individual runners. Now I'll quickly just skip over to the user guide that I've produced for this. So it talks you through every single icon that's in here, different stages that you can do. So pretty much everything I'm going to cover in this video, but it's in a written version. So if you don't want to hang about and watch the whole video and you're just interested in me sending you the Betloader, then you just need to send an email to info@chelt-mental.co.uk. I'll put the link up and I'll put it in the comments as well. So just send me an email and I'll reply back with the template of the file and with the user guide. You'll just need to delete the selections that are already in there, but you'll be able to work that out for yourself if you read the user guide or if you carry on watching the video. Just stress that you need to have a 2013 version of Excel or more current. Anything previous to that, you'll have some compatibility issues, but I'm not going to work back and fix a version that's over 5 years old. So like it or lump it. So for this particular part of it, I'm just going to run through what all the different icons do. No particular order really. I think the best thing to do is to go navigate around the file and then I'll come back to adding in selections. So the plus icon is to add in, the minus selection is to remove. We've got a graph icon, which we'll skip to now. Now this shows you your top 10 returns and your top 10 implied chance. Both calculations are in both charts. The bars are showing you how much you could win and the line is showing you your best chances. So classical dream at this moment would be around about a 20% chance. Been back to around about the 4-1 mark then I guess, and then you can see there's 200 quid to come back from him. You don't necessarily have to have these two lines matching up, and this is where the live feed from Odds Checker would have been relevant because it would give us a real implied chance, but you know, it's a bit of a visual just for the sake of it. We've got a list view here which goes day by day, so you can see the bets you've got starting on each of those days. Then there's something later on which I'll show you shortly that essentially you can stick in the results as they're going through, so these will update. So you can see we've got Betloader and Altior in the table here. When Betloader wins the champion hurdle, you can put that result in here, and then Altior would move over to Wednesday because that's when the Queen Mother takes place. So we'll talk about that a bit in a little while. We've also got the results calculator, so this is one of my favourite things to spend some time looking at. You can put in here results without affecting the main table, so these aren't amending anything in the bet slips, these aren't changing doubles to multiples saying they've actually won. This is for you just to be able to put in some selections and say, imagine if Classical Dream and Paisley Park both won, how much could I stand to win? The total stake is your stakes on that particular market, so the £50 are on the Champion Hurdle and Stairs markets on their own. The one where we've got £0 stake, that would be Champion Hurdle and Stairs as a double. So I'll talk about that more in January when I do an update video on this, but you'll get to a point where you've backed some horses for certain races. You might think, oh, I'm worried about that, I'm worried about that one, this one might be a danger, for etc, etc. you'll know if you've staked £50 on a market and you're going to stand to win 250 quid, that if it gets to the day and there's two horses you're worried about, even if they were 6 to 1 the pair, so you're going to get £70 back for a tenner on each of them. If you stuck £10 on each of those, you'd be getting £70 back from £70 staked on the market, and if the one you fancy wins, you'll be getting your 250. So where I was saying about using free bets and things like that before, that might be an option, to cover yourself out. But without knowing how much you've got on the selections and how much you stand to win and how much you've already staked on a market, you're guessing really. And the email icon is to send email versions, so it's a list view of the selections with the payouts in race order. Just an email, and it can be saved as an image, so you can stick it on your phone. You don't need to print anything out. And then when we use this trophy icon here, there's a warning message saying that there's updates, your main data table changes are irreversible, that sort of stuff. But we can use it in here because it's just a dummy version. But when you put these in, where I put Classical Dream in the results calculator, that doesn't amend the workbook. If we were to use that particular icon to put the results in, it would amend any multiples that selection's in. So if we've got Classical Dream and Paisley Park in a double, it would chop the double into a single now in Paisley Park because we know Classical Dream's won. So what I'll do is I'm going to add some selections in and I'll do the results thing, and that would make it a little bit more clear, hopefully, as to how that part works. Your total staked is calculated by how much you've obviously staked, but any free bets are minus from that value. With the remove icon, you can select from the list the bets you might want to remove, or you can search for a horse, and that will highlight all of those selected ones in there. So unfortunately, when we get these horses that are non-runners because of injuries or whatever it is, you can remove them completely, which would chop your stake off. Say you manage to cash out of a bet and get your stake back. If you want to really keep an eye on how much you've staked and your profit and loss really, if you remove the bet non-runner no bet, if it was non-runner no bet, your stake will be chucked out. If it's in a multiple, the trebles will be reduced to doubles, doubles to singles, normal non-runner no bet applying. If it wasn't non-runner no bet and you click remove non-runner no bet, it will make the bet a losing bet in the main table, but it will keep your stake there because obviously you've lost your stake. So you can do that. You'd use remove completely really if you managed to cash out, you cancelled the bet, or you made a mistake. So we don't need to worry about that for now. There is a little bit of a definition in the question mark, anything that sort of tries to help us in there. So the main bit that you'd be using would be to add in selections. We're going to keep piling them up. So for this instance, what we'll do is we will just put in a simple bet, and I'll show you essentially how it works. So any selection that you've already put in will already be in the list. So when you start typing those horses, you can see that it pre-fills. But if we're going to add a new horse in, then we do have to type, and it will add to the list for the next time. So we're going to say we're going to back Album 30 for the Gold Cup. Not really sure what price he is, but we'll say he's 16 to 1. And we're going to add that selection. So the reason the Bet365 box has now grayed itself out, the bookmaker, is because any more selections you're going to add would be suggesting you're doing multiples, which means it can only be with the same bookmaker. If you're trying to add in 5 horses that you've had tenors on with different bookies, you have to just do it one by one. It's the way that I've got it set up. So we're going to say Album Photo, Paisley Park's going to win the stairs, of course. We'll add him in. And you can see there that it's put Paisley above Album Photo now because it knows that's the order of the races. And then we'll go Classical Dream because he's going to win, isn't he? This is a ticket in itself to teach you. So I've added that selection in there. It's put them in the order it is. It gives us all the multiples that we could potentially stake, all the variations. You can see the odds have been put in as decimals by myself. There is a fractions table below, so if you can't work out the decimals, you select that and it'll add it in. And obviously if you're betting each way, which I don't do, then you want to be selecting the correct place terms. Now in this instance, if we were going to be looking at doing a £10 patent, there isn't the option for the patent. You just need to put them in as individual stakes, and you can see the total comes up to 70 quid. If it's a free bet, you check that box. If it's non-runner no bet, you check that box. And if you want to keep the stakes, you check that box. And what keeping stakes does is if you've got 1, 2 or 3 patents you want to put in, rather than having to keep putting the stakes in the bottom, you just add and remove your selections to put the next bet in, and it will remember that you're putting tenors on everything. So use them as you need to. Once we click submit, you'll see the data table on the left hand side is updating. You'll see the table on the right hand side is updated with the single stakes, so the values have been added onto those that already had singles, and new singles have been added to that table.
When we go back and look in here, we can see that those bets are in there. So Classical Dream's got these extra bit on a single, he's got the album photo of the Paisley Park, and he's got the treble that's in there as well. Now what I'm going to update in here, adding the results thing, is we're going to say Classical Dreams won the Champion Hurdle, and you'll see what happens to those bets now. So in here, we get to pick a race, we get to pick a result. We'll add that in. So you can see now that the results already confirmed are down below. You can't change that. Classical Dreams won the Champion Hurdle. This is fact. We're putting these in now. That's what the warning message is telling you. But you can see the Classical Dreams single still there because that was him in his own right. But we'd have to skip across now to Thursday to see, look, Paisley Park's value's gone up to 490. I think it was 290 before, somewhere around that. Paisley Park album photos, now their double's gone even bigger because obviously it's now into a treble. And then when we skip across to Friday, you can see album photos amounts shot up. When we come back to the front page, we can see that the single values on the table on the right have gone up. And when we look to the left-hand side here, the bets that were added to the bottom as those multiples, the selections, the races, and the bet type have changed. We can still see in there that it's got the treble odds, it's got the free lots of quarters, things like that, but they're not really being used to do anything. And the main reason why this is helpful is that once we get into the festival, your Tuesday's finished, you've smashed out the Supreme winner, you've smashed out the Arkle winner, we've cleaned up in the mares, we've had the Champion Hurdle winner, we've even had the Ultima, we've had the Close Brothers, and we're probably going to might as well just do the national one as well. We've gone through the card on the first day, you've got those results in, so now when you're going to do your icon for Wednesday, this is going to update all your bets to show what your running totals are. So you don't even have to work out when Classical Dream wins how much money you're going to win on the next, or how much that means is more is going on other horses. You'll stick it in the Betloader and it'll work all that out for you. And it's another one again that we may have horses that we think we've got fully loaded that we fancy that actually when you look at this, I haven't got enough money on him, so you want to start padding them out. You might have ones where you think, right, I've got Paisley Park in loads of bets here, and actually you've had a really bad Tuesday, Wednesday, and you look at Paisley Park on his own, you actually haven't got that much money on him. Now you don't want to be spending a season going through horses, picking fancies, all those sorts of things, just to get to the day of the race and realise, oh, naff, I don't actually have him covered, I don't have as much on as I thought I did because of previous results. So that's why singles are probably the best way to be playing anyway, but when you've got these multiples in there, it just really reassures you what's going on. But the main thing about using this is it's an easy way to keep all your bets consolidated, it's an easy way to view everything, it's all at the touch of your fingers. It's good to use this results calculator to dream about the money you could be winning, and I think it is really helpful, and it definitely makes me a smarter anti-post punter, because like I said, we're looking at some of those races where we might really fancy Classical Dream for the champion, we might really fancy Paisley Park for the stayers, we might get to £1,000 on Paisley Park as a win return, and we've only got 200 quid off of Paisley Park as a win return. So you'd probably think, right, we need to start padding out Paisley Park. And then it'd be another thing as well that you might look at when it gets nearer the time. You might think, do you know what, that horse looks pretty tasty. I reckon that could actually throw a bit of a spanner in the works for something like the Stayers Hurdle, or the Champion Hurdle, or any race, of course. You might want to get some cover on there. So Champion Hurdle last year was an absolute classic example of this. So I was into Bouvet there, wanted to retain the faith with him. Willie Mullins said Septemberish, I think it was, at any stable tall arena was going to go Champion Hurdle, so 16-1, I had some of that. Apple's Jade, when we were at Sandown and we saw her win over in Ireland, she had to go for the Champion Hurdle, then you could still get 12, so I backed her. And you think the prices those went off, so I've managed to back Bouvet there, reasonable stakes, 4-5-1. Lorena at a big price, Apple's Jade at a big price. So I had the race pretty much sewn up with those three, but Espoir de Lamb was a horse that I was well into for the Triumph the year before. Obviously injury curtailed that. I actually fancied him for the Champion Hurdle this year before he ran in and won last season's. Obviously that won't happen now, but he was 25-1, and you know, the stakes that you've put in there and the fact that he is a proper horse, he was one that I had 30 quid on, I think. I can't remember exactly what my full stakes were on the race, but I think I was somewhere around about 250 quid staked on the race, maybe a tiny bit more. But obviously I got 780 odd quid back from Espoir de Lamb winning it. Everything was a profit, backing all those horses. So the reason I'm bringing all that up is you can get away with betting more than one horse in a race. That'll be something that I'm going to bring up in these other videos. I'm going to put a few anti-post pointers out there, but in terms of the Betloader, which is why I'm going to try and wrap this up, this is how it works. Send an email in, I'll get everything sent over to you. If you get any problems, give me a shout. If you're not interested in an online version, then there is the hacked up horse racing gifts. They do the Road to Cheltenham notebook, which is awesome. Can't beat it. There's nothing better on the market. Not only is it just a notepad, it's got stats, trends, key races in there. It's just decent. I think it's a tenner. It's ridiculous. So if you've managed to last this long and you actually think, you know what, it's not for me, then buy one of them, because you need something to keep a tale of what's going on. And yeah, that's about it. So I'm going to do a few more videos about anti-post punting. This is severely around the Betloader, obviously, but you know, anything you're interested in, any comments or any feedback or anything you'd like to know or you'd like me to try and work on and try and get done, then, you know, give me the feedback, because I always like to hear it and I'll always answer what anyone said. So thanks again, guys, always for your support, and see you soon for the next video.